Hello everyone. So as you can probably tell by the handheld nature of this video and the difference in sound and video quality, that I'm going to be doing something a little bit different for the Old and Word Book Review channel. This is not so much going to be a vlog as it is really a series of essays, or not so much essays, more ramblings. That's probably, essays is probably too generous a word. I have some things to say, and really I've wanted to change the channel a little bit, because I don't want to have just this channel be about reviews. I mean, I tried to do that with the readings, the 2 readings on the channel. I've not done as much of those as I'd like though. So I wanted to try something different, and now this is inspired by Better Than Foods. I can't remember exactly what it's called, but it's basically about the joys of reading and about the necessity of reading, and if someone has a capability to read, they probably should read. This is my little contribution to that. Completely unstructured. I've really just sat down. I'm currently reading a book, and I've had the idea. I looked at my phone and realised I could actually record a little video here. So why not give it a go? Just see how it goes and see if it lives up to the rambly nature of what I said it was going to be, which is a ramble. So this really is going to be about why you should read, and why it's beneficial to read, and how to break through certain barriers in terms of sort of intellectual barriers and even emotional barriers, and it's, obviously you hear that thing of reading can improve people's sympathy or empathetic levels, I suppose. And it's just, there's so much to reading where I found that I started off reading very basic books, and then through time you can look back at certain books and you say, did I actually read that? No, actually that's a good point, where I want to first clarify before I even begin this ramble. I want to clarify that I was sort of hesitant to record this because it sounds like it sounds almost pompous in a way to go on about the value of reading and reading difficult books and all that sort of stuff. It sounds quite arrogant, and I try to keep my British sensibility of trying to be humble about these things. I know that I'm not bloody Martin Heidegger or Plato or whatever. And I really would just want to clarify that if I say I've read a certain book, I really just mean that in terms of my personal progress. Like, I started with Orcs by Stan Nichols or whatever, and then I've read the Iliad or whatever. You see what I mean? There's a difference there. I believe I'm sort of more of an objective person, and I believe that there's a difference between reading books and the value of books, and I probably will get onto that, maybe in this video, maybe in another video. But I believe in the difference between books and sort of intellectual rigour and whatnot, and exclusivity as well. I don't really like the sort of mishmash of everything is equal, etc. Anyway, see, yeah, this definitely is, this is living up to the rambly nature. Anyway, where was I? I think really I just wanted to clarify that I don't want to be gloaty, or I don't want to suggest that I'm intelligent or whatever. It's really about more my personal progress, and you could perhaps experience the same thing if you read and you get into reading and you train the reading muscle, I suppose. So I'm just sitting here, and I was reading this book here. I'm not quite sure if you can see it. The Passion of the Western Mind. It's quite a hefty tome. In preparation for going to Rome, actually, in early November. And really, it's a good jumping off point. The Passion of the Western Mind by Richard Tarnas. Reading through this, it's just extraordinary, where you get this feeling of this narrative, this grand narrative, and it really puts your place in the world into perspective. And I can just look out into the garden and just think of everything that's come before. And I guess this overlaps with a lot of things being interested in history and ecology gives you a sense, for me personally, gives me a sense of where I've come from and how things have developed, and it gives you a sort of, it's like when people say going travelling it broadens the mind. The same is true for reading and just being more open to sort of scientific fields and whatnot, and just being learning for learning's sake, and sort of being intrinsically motivated to learn stuff. Now, obviously, you can get into the whole thing of is sitting here reading really beneficial when you could be out doing something? So that's a whole other thing you could go on and talk about. But for example, I could be writing right now. Is that more important than learning about Aristotelian epistemology or whatever? Currently, I feel like I'm sort of struggling to write actually, so I'm really focusing on this particular book at the moment. I'd started off this year, and actually only until about a month ago or so, I really was focusing on writing, and so I've only read about 24, 25 books, maybe 26, so it's quite a small amount compared to last year. But now, anyway, that's a completely different thing. I don't know how I got onto that. Anyway, so The Passion of the Western Mind is just a good jumping off point because it really gives you a sense of how things have developed. And that has parallels to the idea of reading itself, and how you can progress and develop from more basic books to more complex books. And I firmly believe I definitely have the more objective mindset and the more exclusive mindset, where I think there is value in sitting down and struggling to read something. I've had debates with people about if certain pursuits are more valuable or whatnot than reading, and I definitely think that there's good in all things. Obviously, there's pros and cons in all things, but I definitely think that if someone puts in the effort to read, and this probably just sounds like me saying, give me credit and kudos and look at me for reading difficult books or whatever. And I know that it can sound like that, but I really think there's value in reading difficult stuff, and precisely because of the fact that you're willing to put in the effort to understand the world. It's like if you read a scientific book, if you read some complex work of literature, the foundational works of the Western canon or whatever it could be, whatever it might be, any book, any artwork, or any art worthy of your time, I think that is more valuable and should be more worthy of praise, personal praise, than watching Love Island or whatever. Am I wrong? I don't think I am, personally. I cannot get into the mindset of thinking of playing a game as being more worthy than reading the Iliad, the foundational work of sort of Western literature, you could say. And I hate the fact that I have to sort of what's the word? I have to defend it almost by saying, or soften it by saying it's fine just to go about your life watching Love Island or whatever. I don't think it is necessarily. There's entertainment, obviously, but then I would even say that there's certain books that can be entertaining but are also more worthwhile than other books. I don't know. So I'm more sort of hierarchical and objective in a way. Anyway, so really, I'll say that I've not read as much as I would have liked. So I really started reading just in the last handful of years. Actually no, that's not true. I was about to say I'd always read, but really up until about the year 2017, I didn't really read at all. Of course, I'd read in school, but I didn't really read at all. And it's really an interesting progression where certain books that I can look back on now, I remember feeling that they were extremely intimidating, and like there was a genuine wall or barrier Sorry, I apologise for you probably can see my finger actually over the camera. A genuine wall or barrier that really prohibited sort of understanding of the text, and it's only once things start linking up that you can really appreciate certain works. The sense of the more you read, the more little connections. It's like a neural network or whatever. It's the more you read, the more things cohere and connect and link up, so that you can, if you read for example, just today actually, I was reading something in there, and something just clicked in my head where I remembered something from another book, and it becomes this patchwork of knowledge that eventually coheres into this greater picture, I suppose. And so really, I'll give an example. Yes, I think I mentioned before, I used to read things like Stan Nichols' Orcs books, the Orcs Omnibus trilogy, and that for me was like the standard of reading. It's basically just this cheesy, typical fantasy about orcs killing people and whatnot. And I could never imagine that I would want to, so I was a teenager back then, in, I don't know, 2010 I think it was. And I could never imagine actually sitting down, reading, I don't know, The Denial of Death by Ernest Becker, or Passion of the Western Mind by Richard Tarnas, or The Iliad, or Crime and Punishment, or Notes from Underground by Dostoevsky as well. And actually getting to grips with philosophical concepts, and really just trying to understand things for their own sake and intrinsic value. And I think that there's a good analogy here, or sort of comparison, to food actually, and to sweet things, where I use this because I was speaking about this not that long ago to two people actually, brother and a friend, where the less you have of bad junk food, the less craving you have for it. And that's definitely the same feeling, where the more you sort of exercise the mind, the stronger your understanding becomes, but also the stronger your need and desire to learn more things. And that's been, I guess, definitely true of me. I've always tried to seek out, I suppose, the best. I've never, to be honest, I've never really been the type of person that sort of reads for entertainment's sake. Even when I read fiction, I try to go for stuff like Grabinski, and again, it sounds pretentious as hell, but I always try to go for stuff that has some more value than just pure entertainment value. And I think I definitely was not like that all the time. Actually, so I think I said always, but it's definitely a more, it's something that you acquire over time, I think. And really, another aspect of this, which links more towards Better Than Food's video, where he's mostly talked about the capability of reading. Now, if you have the capability to read, I think it's criminal to ignore the knowledge that is available to you. It's at your fingertips. Because this whole sort of world that exists around you, and that is accessible and made accessible through the sort of portal of books, it's just astonishing that some people have no desire to read. And even if they read, see, it sounds horrible, but even if they read some sort of generic sort of paperback thriller from an airport that's got it's got nothing to say, it's got no deeper meaning to it, it's just purely for entertainment value, that's fine up to a certain point, I think. but is it not better to challenge yourself, to grow? I can't remember who was it that said. Oh, I looked at this recently. Who was it that said the unexamined life is a life not worth living? I think that's definitely true, and I think reading is definitely more. Um, you can get more. The introspective and reflective person gets more out of reading. So I'm just adjusting the camera there. Gets more out of reading than the external person, the sort of extroverted person. Now, admittedly, I do have this tendency to imagine that the introspective person and the introverted person are somehow more valuable, but they obviously have their strengths and weaknesses. Um, don't know where I was going with that, but yeah. So it's definitely a ramble, not an essay. So really, I think that's what I want to say. I think in order to get into this mindset of wanting to read and wanting to learn more, you have to make that first breakthrough. I can't remember what book that was for me, although actually I do remember. I think it was Nabokov's Lolita, the book of Lolita. I think that I remember reading that and at the time thinking that the words just made no sense whatsoever. And somehow that it's just a book that I've read and it's just easy to read now. A couple of years ago, that's just one that sticks to mind. I think I remember that being something that I bought. I remember buying several books at one time, and they always just stayed on the shelf, and I just did not have any desire to read it because I felt like it was so beyond my sort of realm of understanding. And it's a lot. I'm trying to think of more books. I guess I'll just talk about the Iliad. Um, I quite enjoy these rambles actually. I'm going on for far too long. I think I will call them rambles in the description. Um, the Iliad. I think for me that one was definitely one where it's so important and so high-minded and literary and such a foundational text that I felt that I could not possibly understand it unless I'd read other books around it. And I did actually do that. I remember reading sort of primers on classical literature in ancient Greece itself, actually in the middle of reading the Iliad, and before it as well, prior to reading it. And the Iliad for me was something, once I read that, I kind of felt like I could actually just read anything. Crime and Punishment was another one as well. That was actually before the Iliad, I think. It might be in the same year, actually. Either way, I think it was before. And Crime and Punishment, I didn't think I was going to be reading a book about Russian politics when I was a teenager and just had interest in playing games. I was only interested in playing games, and I just, yeah, I just didn't read. I just had no interest in reading. So to read something like that, and to actually sit down and to break through this, or sorry, not to break through, but to be stable and still, I think is what it's like such a key thing that you grow to enjoy actually, to be stable and still when you're reading, because obviously when you haven't trained the reading muscle, you find it very easy to just get up and just your mind wanders, and even still in certain books my mind wanders, and I do actually have some health problems that unfortunately make reading quite a challenge sometimes. Um, and they seem to be compounding recently actually, which makes reading sort of challenging actually. But I still try at least, and that's all you can do. But I think once you read enough work, it's sort of like a logistical growth, sort of like a compounding effect, where the more you read, the easier it becomes, and the more connections you make. So it's also that thing of, I want people to experience what I've experienced with reading, and like this the worth that can be gotten out of books. I want people to experience that, and to really get into the habit of reading, because it's a habit that you sort of develop over time. It is a strength that you develop over time. And another example, just sitting down and reading Pliny's Natural History from cover to cover, just out of the sheer interest of what another person in the ancient world thought of various topics. I might have been doing something else, but I read that instead. And obviously there's a whole thing where I might have done something else, sort of improved myself. I felt like I improved myself intellectually by reading that, just as using that example. But obviously there's a whole thing where you could say, is it not just feeding the ego? Is it not just a futile task? Why are you sitting reading something that someone once thought and has no real connection to the world as it is, the present predicament, and your place in the world, really? But again, it's that, for me, for history anyway, for me it's this thing of, it gives me a better grounding and a better understanding of where I am, and where we've sort of come as a sort of species. It's a really, really broadening, enlarging effect. I'm trying to think of more books. This does extend to, obviously I've spoken about the Iliad, but it extends. I meant to say that I focused a lot on non-fiction, historical works, philosophy, stuff like that, scientific books as well. But it really extends to fiction. Reading the great works of literature. It just, not only does it increase empathy, it also gives you a better understanding of cultural phenomena, and it gives you a better understanding of artistic progress. It gives you a better understanding of the range of emotions that people can experience, the range of characters and different viewpoints, and just, there's nothing better than being able to experience a different mode of existence, and being able to relate that to yourself. I often read books where the characters and the protagonists are somewhat aligned to me, and I can sort of see myself through their lens, and sort of helps in a way. But and that's something actually I need to be better at as well. I need to read stuff from people that I don't particularly agree with, and actually that's something I say that I'm doing that right now by reading Passion of the Western Mind. I'm sitting here reading about the Papal Schism. I'm sitting here reading about the Thomas Aquinas and his need to reconcile the Christian faith with Greek science. I've read a surprising amount. I'm not Christian, as you can probably tell, but I've read a surprising amount on Christianity, medieval textbooks and whatnot. I say this to sort of back up the point that I am actually trying to understand things from different perspectives, and I actually a good example of this, and this is a whole thing I could get into. It's not so much about reading, but it serves as a good example where I have become more receptive to the Christian sort of worldview and the culturally Christian sort of the how to encapsulate it, I guess the Christian worldview that has shaped my own worldview and has given me a lot, and has given us a lot, I suppose, in the West. I used to think that all Christians were ignorant, barbaric people that were scared of the dark, and had no sort of inclination to science and no desire to learn anything in the world denying. And actually, it's just incredible just reading about Aquinas and how he himself wasn't world denying, and he had his scholasticism was very much useful in terms of understanding the world, and for in and of itself, and understanding nature to get closer to God. But anyway, that's a whole, just went on a massive tangent there. But yeah, reading is very good at letting you see different perspectives. So I think I'll end it there really. There's so much, as you can probably tell, there's so much more I could say about this, and I have enjoyed doing this, and I think I will do more video essays like this. The whole other thing really, where I've really, although I do go on personal tangents and just sort of open up a little bit, and in some cases in some of my video reviews, there's a whole other side where I could be talking about philosophy and history and my own sort of ethics and worldview and whatnot. It's a little bit indulgent. Again, for me, I try to keep this sort of British sensibility of humbleness and not trying to. I'm not really a fan of outpourings of, or I'm somewhat suspicious of outpourings of feeling, I suppose. So I don't really want to sit here and tell you what I think and how that may be better than other worldviews, or just, I don't really, I like to keep myself to myself, I suppose. Although I do really, I have this sort of, I would like to go on big rants and tangents and whatnot and put more of myself out there. I sort of do that in my writing actually. Pretty much everything I write is, it does have something of me in it. But anyway, so I don't know what I'll call this. A ramble about the need to read, I think. Anyway, I hope you found that interesting. Hopefully it wasn't too rambly. I mean, I do have this inclination to start again and make it more concise, but I really think there's something in here that I've wanted to say, and hopefully you get where I'm coming from in some respects. And I'm perfectly happy for you to disagree, even dislike the video, for some of my points there. I hope you enjoyed that. So we'll see where this goes going forward. Planning to do a little bit more of these. But anyway, that was Taylor. That was Taylor, and not just Olden Word Books. It's Taylor from Olden Word Books. And thanks for watching, everyone. Probably will do a review next in the coming days as well, so you have that to look forward to as well. Cheers.